and let us all do we can to build a better future.
So, we here at Heartlands Media have a platform open for everyone to share their thoughts, their opinions, their points of views, be they candidates, activists, organizers, commentators, independent journalists, and I'm very proud to have this guest onto our show. She has been smeared by corporate media, the Vote Blue No Matter Who crowd kept on attacking her character, and we now have the opportunity to introduce to all of you, first time appearing on our show, Tara Reade. Thank you so much for joining us. I know I might have missed a few other things that you're a part of. For our viewers, can you please introduce yourself and tell us what programs and shows that you are part of and what you do?
Hi, thanks so much for having me. And, you know, I appreciate your work and, you know, being a platform to kind of raise issues and talk about things that need to be discussed. I contribute op-eds to RT, and I also have a podcast called The Politics of Survival. And you can find it every other Friday or so. It's on every platform. If you just Google Politics of Survival, Tara Reade, you'll find it. And I'm active on social media, particularly in Twitter. The rest of it, I'm kind of, you know, not as active. I authored a book called Left Out When the Truth Doesn't Fit In, which discussed my experiences coming forward about Joe Biden, who was my former boss when he was a US Senator, and I was a Senate aide. I was sexually harassed and sexually assaulted by him. And I made a complaint, went through protocol. I was silenced, I was threatened. And I came forward again in 2019 and 2020 with 7 other women. And again, corporate media just went after me. I was pretty much target practice for the New York Times for the whole summer of 2020 during the campaign. And I had come forward, you know, at a time when I thought I had the Me Too movement around me, and I thought I had Time's Up around me. And lo and behold, because we were in this contentious presidential race, you know, and Trump was the bad guy, Biden was supposed to be the good guy, and I was politically inconvenient. And for that, I paid the price of losing everything by coming forward. I mean, it affected my work, it affected housing, it affected every aspect of my life. They went after me on social media and used media to attack me. New York Times raked through my life, even calling my high school drama teacher and high school boyfriend, accusing me of having an online Russian boyfriend, which I don't have. I'm still waiting for him to call. And they said it was unknown sources or anonymous sources told them that. And from the get-go, when I came forward, I expected the total, you know, rape myths that you usually hear, what she was wearing, she's lying, she wants attention, whatever those are. First of all, survivors do not want this kind of attention. No one wants to be known for you know, being raped. It's horrible. You're notorious. You're not famous. Second of all, you know, my political opinions shouldn't have even mattered about coming forward. I had worked for Joe Biden. Obviously, I was a Democrat, and I had worked for Leon Panetta, and I had worked in a congressional race. I had been a Democrat all my adult life. The fact that they tried to weaponize my sexual assault as some sort of political football was horrible. And so you were kind enough to read my op-ed that I wrote for RT discussing how the attacks were just nonstop. And still today, like, as you know, last week, 2 days ago or 3 days ago, Edward Isaac Dovier again, it refers to me as like a Russian asset and still is like, and he's a senior CNN reporter. So it's not just like someone on the internet. These are people with huge platforms and, you know, in the media. And so it's really daunting when you're a regular person with no resources.
You know, when I read that op-ed from RT America, I felt it was very important to hear your voice. And the thing is, it's just not only Joe Biden, a Democrat, that has all these scandals surrounding him. There's also, again, disgraced Governor Andrew Cuomo. There were 8 women that heroically came forward, and he resigned before there could be any kind of justification. But I think, Daniel, I do want to hand it over to you because you have question about Me Too and Time's Up.
So I have a couple things even before that. This right now, where we're at right now, is very surreal for me because I still remember back when all of this was breaking, and we were in a completely separate studio when this happened. And I remember thinking to myself, and I think a lot of our discussion we were having at that time is like, this is the moment we were like, without a doubt, Me Too, Time's Up, they're political organizations. Like we were like when Me Too and all that first happened, we were like, oh, this is good. This is going to help regular people in a culture that we're dealing with right now be in a spot where they actually have recourse. They could redress these things if their company won't. And of course, it never turned out to be that way. It ended up being a place where multimillionaire women could become slightly more wealthy and famous by going through this process. But I just remember like all the coverage that we did when this happened, that it just was like, we're watching these groups go, we're here for all women, we're here to protect women, and then you come forward with testimony that's, again, no different from any other that they would have followed, with many other women at your side. And what did they do? They said, no, well, hers doesn't count because reasons, as you put it, it's inconvenient that both sides have the same narrative. It's inconvenient that Cuomo, the strong New Yorker, that blah, 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 is exactly the same as the person he's being compared to, that Biden is exactly the same as the person he's being compared to. And we just thought that what was being done to you was just atrocious, because it was very obvious that everything about it was the same as everyone that had come against Trump or other people that had been covered. And you were, again, like you said, just swept aside because it was inconvenient that your story happened to be true at the time that they didn't want it to be. So my question I originally wanted to ask was, did it change, or how did this situation change how you thought of Me Too, Time's Up, and I guess to some degree Move On, although Move On has always sort of done this?
Oh, I knew there was a level of corruption because being a political operative in the past, and also just being connected with the people that are still there today and in the back rooms, I knew, the villainization that they take with things like this. But you're right. I thought I had Me Too. I thought I had Time's Up, and Time's Up was a legal organization that was supposed to help survivors. And I didn't know that 3 of the leaders of the Time's Up founders, Hillary Rosen, Tina Chen, and Anita Dunn, who have all had to resign, in scandal, because they basically were catching and killing sexual harassment and sexual stories like mine. And how this came to light was Ryan Grimm at The Intercept raised up the story. And then it went from there to New York Times, but who really brought it forward was Alison Turcos, who's an activist, and she got together 60 of us who all had similar experiences, and it exposed this web of basically of malfeasance, of corruption. And so when I was telling my story to Time's Up, thinking I'm going to get an attorney, I'm going to get PR help, Anita Dunn was already getting paid by Joe Biden up to $700,000 in those weeks I was talking to her. Tina Chen, the day that they said I couldn't have PR because it was too political, she went that night to a Biden fundraiser with her former Obama staffers. Huh. Hillary Rosen made calls to Law and Crime and other media outlets telling them not to air my story. And she even tried to call Rose McGowan to try to get her to step back and not support me. And Rose McGowan has been a huge force, a positive force in my life. She's wonderful, and she speaks out for all survivors. She's a force of nature in herself. And they were trying to silence her too, because she was stepping up for me. All of this was to protect Joe Biden, who, you saw the public tweet by Lisa Bloom, or maybe you didn't, the famous attorney who said, Tara Reade, we know Joe Biden is handsy. We believe you, but we're voting for him anyway. And that encapsulated the neoliberal Democrat elites right there.
It's exactly what this is just a small sliver of a detail that goes over this giant. It's this hypocrisy. It's this lack of accountability. It's this ability to say that they're so used to getting away with, which they still do to this day, the idea of if it's an opponent of ours, we can go after them. But if it's one of us, it's one of us, and one of us must be protected at all cost. Sorry.
Mm-hmm. There's another thing too to really kind of bring up, and that is when we look at the hypocrisy of the Democratic Party, everyone was screaming how Trump is a threat, Trump is a threat. And look, I think we all can agree, Trump is the last person who should become president of the United States. But if you're going to then bring up Biden, who has a history of being on the wrong side of a lot of movements.
Biden did all the policy that Trump talked about.
And let's go a little further. Let's go a little further with that, kid.
Okay.
You know, Donald Trump, actually, and I do not support Donald Trump. And I have also talked to 2 of the survivors that have come forward about him. So I'm not a Republican either. But he didn't start a war. He was bombing Yemen. That's true. And so was, so that's carried through from Obama to now, the current. But look where we are right now. Look at how, like, for instance, I'll link this in. I was called a Russian asset, and this Russophobia was threading for years. I'd say back before, the Maidan, in Ukraine, back before 2014, they were laying the groundwork to where we are today. And where we are today is that the US fossil fuel industry and the military industrial complex with defense contractors like Lockheed Martin, all of them, they are determined to have a war. It doesn't matter what Russia did. And in fact, a few minutes before I came on here, the US just canceled the summit with Russia. So there's no diplomatic talks that were going to happen in the next 2 days. Those aren't happening now because the US cut it off. So how can there be diplomacy if, and how can the Russians come to the table, as they say, if they take the table away? And they want war. And so what I would say is we're sleepwalking into a horrible situation. So my personal situation, the crime that happened to me was awful and terrible. And all the rhetoric around blue no matter who, the lesser of 2 evils, all of that, put all of that aside and look at what you have. These are hawks. They want war, and they will do anything to have it. And that's where
And I think it's important that we talk about the hypocrisy of corporate media, but at this point, maybe it's not even fair to call it hypocrisy because corporate media knows what they're doing.
It's funny. It's like we always joke about CNN because they're just like trying to hold on to the ratings, like just attacking people. Like, we'll just copy. CNN is a joke to us, and it's just it's very sad that they're continuing to go after you, but they want to make their money.
And UK papers that are coming out tomorrow, because I was just on a UK segment live, they were reading the headlines that are coming out tomorrow morning in UK or later on tonight in our time. All of them are Putin's a madman, Biden's trying to stop Putin, Putin's invading. They're not invading. You saw the celebrations with those 2 regions that have been destroyed, and asking for help. And they're doing what those people want to have done. And I mean, we as citizens need to start standing up quickly, the anti-war movement, because we're heading there. There's no question. And I tried to sound the alarm early on because I worked with these people. I know these people with their mics off, as Rose McGowan would say. I know how they think. And the warning signs are there. So they're weaponizing the corporate media to make this very, specific message. Russia's bad. The United States, Great Britain, NATO, they're good.
We've mentioned
consensus NATO. So, they're claiming they do, and they do not. France and Germany don't want their countries to become killing fields, and neither does Ukraine. The Ukrainian president said he doesn't want war, and he's asked repeatedly for the US, rhetoric to slow down. They're losing $2 billion a month in their economy because of this, what, is called hysteria, right? In the media. And remember last week when they were predicting the dates of the invasion, right? Yeah, nothing's happened because the Russian president said it, as did the Russian delegation. They don't want war. I mean, why would they? So anyway, my point is that how I was weaponized against is similar to how they'll weaponize against a country, a world leader. And what they do is they make personal attacks and villainize and try to discredit. And then they just use the headlines with the narrative. And people are just kind of sleepwalking around, kind of accepting it, and that's what's kind of scary. And as Americans, we have to start waking up and looking critically at our media and not, they can't just be, purveyors of the intelligence community, from the MI6 and from the CIA. We need actual journalists who will sound the alarm, like Julian Assange, who is now sitting in Belmarsh prison, who exposed war crimes. We need people like that, to really speak up. And I spoke up about what happened to me. And I am a person with no resources. And I have a machine coming at me for 3 years. And it's been relentless. And now we have midterms coming and they're not doing well. So I'm bracing myself for another round of, whatever.
In regards to this, I think it's important that we hear voices like yourself. Hold those in power accountable. Like you said, these people, you worked under Biden, you know who he is when the microphone is off. We've even mentioned on this show that the Democrats and Republicans, they're friends with each other. Their donors are friends with them. Everyone's connected. Hillary Clinton was a Goldwater girl. Donald Trump used to be a Democrat. At the end of the day, George Carlin's quote is truth rather than a comedic punchline. It's one big club and you ain't in it. So I think what I want to ask you then is, for individuals like yourself, be they whistleblowers or victims of people in power, what do you want to say to those that are perhaps maybe afraid to come forward, that want to speak out, but obviously in this day and age of neoliberal media, people are afraid to be silenced? What do you want to say to them?
Well, control your narrative. Like I wrote a book. I write. So writing is kind of my sanctuary. That's where I go and you see me, or you see bits of me, right? Your platform. So platforms that are kind of separated from the corporate interests are important to have, so that you raise up voices that don't normally get heard. You reading my op-ed meant a great deal to me, and meant other people heard it that didn't have time to read it. So I appreciate that. Again, thank you. Those types of things. But I would encourage survivors or other people who are whistleblowing to, scrub your social media. I didn't do that, by the way. That's a good idea. Scrub your social media and get that VPN. And then I would definitely take things, try to work with journalists that will really hear you. Ryan Grimm is very brave, and Glenn Greenwald, and Matt Taibbi and Katie Halper and Crystal Ball. And you have some really good commentators and journalists out there, and Bronco, the Jacobin, you have Brian McDonald at RT. You have these people, these investigative journalists that are trying to bring truth. Follow their accounts, read what they're saying. They're going to give you a different take than the corporate media talking points. And then choose carefully who you help tell your story, because what happened to me, it was just kind of it was a shit show. I mean, come on, let's face it. Everyone was just coming at me. And that, I think, was unusual because we were in a presidential campaign. But whenever you're dealing with a powerful person with unlimited resources, you're coming up against not that person as much as the people around them, and then their ability to shape the narrative their way. So that's what I'd say.
I think it's important to point out that, a lot of people said this, especially when Trump was elected and was president for 4 years. A lot of individuals suffering from Trump derangement syndrome, where everyone was blaming him and calling him the great big evil, when in fact he isn't the architect of the neoliberal system. Now, he's donated to politicians who helped create this nightmare that we are in, but he's a parasite. He is the reaction to the corruption in American politics.
Distinct from anyone else.
No, he's not. So I think it's important for everyone to understand that, especially during that election year, everyone was so dedicated to get rid of Trump. They had no idea, or either that people maybe chose to be ignorant on who they were replacing him with.
I remember I had some conversations with people, and you were quoting earlier that maybe I believe you, but I'm still going to vote Democrat. And I heard a lot of that sentiment from people, and it just gets to me because it's here on Hard Lens, we try to have a pretty consistent point of view that we have the audience hold ourselves to, so that we can't do anything outside of that. And that's the way it should be. It should be the audience that holds us in check. And I still can't get over, the blatant hypocrisy and everything that was done to you. and how much, then they, as you said, they keep going after you. Now you're just a pincushion for them to go after when they need a talking point to be made here or there. While at the same time, man, if I wanted to assault someone, I think CNN might be a great place to work. And it's the same people that are coming after you, the people that have the biggest issues with this in news. And that it's gone to what I've said before on these, a lot of these situations. At the end of the day, and all the people around these big organizations, no one really cared about you. Not just that they didn't care about your story, not even that you were a roadblock for them to get over, but you just became another pawn to them to talk about the things that they already wanted to talk about. They didn't adjust any of their strategy to what you had to say. You just became something else to play around with, like a board of checkers or something.
Yeah, they couldn't go after the veracity of my story. I mean, there was several things that led evidence to that there's something happened, right? And if a proper investigation had happened, it would have probably revealed a lot more. And I think some of the people that spoke to the press under oath would have given a different account, right? So, some of those former staffers of Biden is what I'm talking about. And it's interesting, the 3 people that were witness to the sexual harassment are the only 3 people that were never interviewed by any media outlet ever. So I also want to point out too, I'm too scared. And the people that spoke out against me all got promotions. All of them.
That's how it is. It's always how it is.
And it's also important to point out that it's not only you who came forward, but there were 7 other women that have come forward. And I think we all know, whether you're Democrat, Republican, or independent, that there's numerous videos of Biden acting incredibly inappropriate towards women and children.
Very young children.
And it's out there on the media for everyone to see.
He doesn't honor space. He doesn't honor, and was disconcerting. But, if you even look for it, like even Jennifer Palmieri, who works for The Atlantic, right? And well, not anymore. I think she got a gig with HBO or something, or I forgot where, but she worked for Leon Panetta, like I did, and in the past, and she wrote an article, an op-ed. And if you looked at the article, it didn't quite undermine me. It said something like, well, she said, in her words, I thought it was weird to get hugged and kissed at work. I mean, yeah, it's weird. Like, how many people have their boss bring them in for a full-on embrace and full kiss on the mouth? That's bizarre. That's the kind of dude he was. And even up to the vice presidency. And another remarkable thing is I had an anchor, a major television anchor, say that, tell me that his wife was groped at a diplomatic event by Joe Biden. He goes, look, he tells me off the record. He goes, look, it's off the record. She doesn't want to come forward, but we all know how he is. So he's this known secret. And it was so frustrating for me that these celebrities and these journalists would tell me this, but then out in the public, they wouldn't come forward. It was enraging, actually.
Do you think it's the fact that none of them want to come forward because they don't want to be excluded from the club? Because being part of that neoliberal club, they get access, they get benefits, they get connected, and they don't want to do anything that's going to upset their apple cart. Do you think that that's the situation where everyone knows, but they're afraid because they'll lose their money bag?
Well, look what happened to Rose McGowan. She had a music album coming out. She had a book, all kinds of things, artistic projects coming out. When she came out in support of me and then blasted the New York Times, they didn't do another article about her. They won't, she couldn't get her album raised. I mean, her advocacy for me was so wonderful, but she also sacrificed, herself in a sense, and she shouldn't have had to. She should have been able to say what she wanted. And we've got to figure this out. It's like they're trying to cancel Joe Rogan. I don't agree with everything Joe Rogan says, but if I don't want to listen to him, I won't turn on his podcast. If I want to listen to him, I want the option. So where are we going with this neoliberal cancel, kind of bullshit? And so, of course, it extends to someone like me that's challenging a powerful elite because, hey, he can't be the problem. I have to be the problem. And same thing, with Lindsey Boylan and Charlotte Bennett that came out about Cuomo. Like they were very, they pushed up against the same machine I did. And now it's been revealed through text messages. They were talking about me, using my case as an example. And what did they say? These top staffers in New York State, Democrats, they said, we can victim shame now on the record. That's horrible. That's horrible.
Not only that, it says a lot on why we need to have real independent media and why we need to have, again, real accountability on these social media platforms. These social media platforms should not be publishers. They should not be censoring speech because there are certain trigger words that will upset YouTube or Facebook or Instagram or Twitter. And it's just,
I'm sure you're in the same sort of loop anyway. Just like it's obscene that like ever since Joe Biden took office, every independent media channel on YouTube has stopped growing.
And that's a sad fact. So I think it's also important to bring up this, because as we're getting close to ending our show, I think it's important to bring up two questions, and I really want to get this addressed. Because number one, yesterday's show, we had the wonderful Sabrina, also known as Sabby Sabs, on our show, and you are actually going to be part of the Women's Summit of 2022. That's going to be on February 26th and 27th. Can you tell us a little bit more about it, what you guys are going to be talking about, so that way our viewers and subscribers can get more information about this big event? Because it's not only you that's going to be there. There's going to be a lot of power players there for the Women's Summit of 2022.
I think it'll be a really good event, and we're going to be discussing some of the issues with domestic violence in our country, as well as sexual assault. And I'll be there on the 27th. And please, if you can attend, please do. And also there's some Assange things coming up. So follow Misty, Misty Winston has a great show, and she, has really been trying to raise awareness about Assange being imprisoned in Belmarsh and what that means for press freedom. And so it's all kind of interlinked as far as, silencing us on platforms, silencing us as, by gender or by whatever. We're in a class war, we're in a race war, we're in a gender war. I mean, it's the elites have us at each other instead of us coming up against the elites saying, what's going on. And you had brought up a good point earlier about our domestic thing. And I just want to say one thing about that. We have over 500,000 people homeless. We have 25% of our children in poverty. We have had no significant legislation to address poverty in this country, with the House, Senate, and White House belonging to the Democrats. And what does that tell you? What it tells me is they didn't have any intention of creating change for workers ever.
I think we do have a question that's for you on our Rockfin platform. I think it's from actually a good friend of the show, Roger Meadows. This is directed towards you. Tara, I'm not a religious person, but I am spiritual, although not as much as I would like to be. But I am saying a prayer for you, for God to keep you safe, and for those who try to harm you to feel instant karma. I'm sure you, being on Crystal Ball fan, you've been checking out their coverage on the Disney Plus hurricane coming to CNN. Was a whole, it was the Discovery Plus. I'm sorry, on the Discovery Plus hurricane coming to CNN was the whole round firing, starting with Cuomo and Zucker.
Yeah. So his question is more about that, or I'm sorry.
I think it's just more of a statement.
He's making more of a statement.
More of a statement.
Okay. Yeah. Definitely. I mean, the culture is really, I think, in America, we've institutionalized rape culture, unfortunately. And I don't like to say that all the time, but it's just true. We've made it so that sexual assault allegations sometimes are weaponized for political reasons, which is not okay. Survivors are used as clickbait, which isn't okay. And what I did was take my narrative back by writing a book, but also, I have to give RT a shout out, because they have been so gracious to me, and I have the platform with them, but they never use me for clickbait. They never exploit my story. And it's actually been one of the better places I've ever worked in my life. So when I've done op-eds for them, and again, I'm only freelance, I'm not, whatever, but they're all my ideas. They're all my narrative. So for other survivors, just finding that place. Independent News Network, they wanted to say hi to you, by the way. Reef and them, Indie News, they've been a wonderful platform as well, and giving voices and lifting all of us up that are not attached to corporate. So that's how we can keep it going. And we've got to pay attention to what's happening right now with us, with the Biden administration now trying to distract from the domestic and take us to war. We have to look at it.
By the way, every American president in the situation. Sorry, go ahead.
No, it's fine. Go ahead. What were you going to say?
No, I was going to say it's like America's so predictable. That's what I'm trying to say. It's like if things are bad domestically, go to war somewhere else. If you're doing this, abuse someone here. If you're abusing someone here, do something else. It's like they have a playbook, and it's pretty obvious. And without any real effort, you could reverse engineer exactly what they're going to do before they even do it.
And I always like reading some op-eds and articles from RT, because then it allows me to say, don't tell Rachel Maddow or MSNBC. They might foam at the mouth.
Absolutely hysterical to me that, like, with all the freedom America touts, like, and like the story you're telling us is the story we've heard from a bunch of other people that have worked on RT. It's like RT seems to give a lot more freedom of expression than any U.S. institution, or at least to the 5 corporations that own 94 or 92% of the whole media.
No matter how
and I would be the first one who would jump ship if that wasn't the case. And I'm telling you that, because look how much crap I get for, that in that regard, like you're a Russian agent, or someone's now online calling me on social media, Miss Russia or whatever. I was on a farm in Wisconsin when I was a little girl. I was born in California. It's ridiculous. This was just Biden's campaign. It was his way, because I have different views, because I'm an anti-imperialist. I believe that we should not have Russia as an enemy, nor neo-McCarthyism, okay? It's not the Soviet Union anymore. It's Russia, and it's a power and economic force in the world, and there needs to be balance. That view makes me an outlier. That view made Donald Trump an outlier in that regard, because he also said Russia shouldn't be an enemy, and he was right.
Sometimes a broken clock can be right occasionally. So there you go. Sometimes a politician might get it right.
Yeah, he's terrible on everything else. But I will say that we don't need to have another nuclear power to be our enemy. And they don't want to be. They're just, like, if you look at every other country in the world, what are we all concerned about, right? We're concerned about a living wage, getting food on our table, educating our children, clothes on our back. It's local politics, right? The Biden administration and their hawks are taking us to another foreign land to fight a war that no one will win, and no one wants to be a part of, but they'll line their pockets. Lockheed Martin and all the rest, all the manufacturers.
Got to get money out of politics. So I think that's a final question. And again, Tara, you are more than welcome, not only if you're ever in the city of Chicago, to visit us here at the 99 Perspective Studio, but always welcome to be a returning guest onto our show. So far, as a final note, where can our viewers and subscribers find you online to support your work? Or can you also tell us about any other events that are happening?
And I think someone specifically asked for your website in the chat a little bit ago.
Yeah, so let's have all of that.
I'm not really too active on my website. It just has my book, tarareadeauthor.com, so you can look for it there. But my Twitter is @ReadeAlexandra, and my podcast is The Politics of Survival. You can find it on all the major, platforms, being and I do have it on Spotify, and it will stay there, and Amazon and everywhere else, that you find podcasts. So Buzzsprout is actually a good place to go to look for podcasts, and it kind of lists all the platforms. And, so reach out to me. I have my DMs open. Sometimes I wish I didn't, but I do that for survivors mainly who reach out to me. But you're also welcome to, email me and DM me. And I do respond, and I will talk to people who, want to know resources or need some help. So thank you for all you're doing. And it was such a huge compliment when you read that op-ed. It meant a great deal to me. So thank you.
You know what? That's perfectly fine. And it's a voice that needs to be heard, because I found it outrageous the way corporate media was smearing not only you, but the other 7 women that came forward. Let's face it, at this time right now, we got to break away from the 2-party system. We got to break away from money and politics, and we got to break the corporate monopoly that the media is controlling over all of us. And I do hope enough people do wake up. Every voice should be heard. And Tara Reade, no matter what, we do extend an invite that if you're ever in Chicago, you're more than welcome to visit us here, and we do welcome you to be back onto our show. Tara Reade, thank you so much for being on our show, and we wish you all the best.
Hey, thank you. And Chicago Bears rock. So do the Packers. So take care.
I'm more of a White Sox fan, so that's the team that has my heart.
You know me, I'm sports.
White Sox, definitely, and thank you. And I do want to. Next time I come, let's talk White Sox. Okay.
Okay, no problem. And remember to also share to our friends on the Convo Couch that Chicago style pizza is the best.
Oh yeah, we have a whole running thing with them.
Yes, so there we go. There we go. All right, thank you so much, Tara.
All right, take care. Bye.